morning, students. Is the screen visible and audible?
Yeah, good morning, madam.
Good morning. Is the screen visible?
Yeah, madam.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can see.
So,
Yes.
is anyone ready with the topic as to how the legislation would be enacting a law? Are you ready to share your observation, opinion, knowledge? Anyone? So, because why we should know this? The basic concept herein is law of contract provides the freedom to the parties while they are entering into the contracts, and at the same time gives some guidance as to how the contract can be entered into, and if they want the protection from the law, if any nuances occur during the entering of contract or subsequent to the contract, as the case may be, the law would be coming into their protection only when they follow the principles of the law. Otherwise, they cannot help, isn't so? So, a guidance will be provided to the parties, and at the same time, it will be offering the freedom. It will be providing the freedom to the parties to enter into the contracts, keeping in view their convenience, expectation, etc., etc., provided that expectation is legitimate. So it is not like that of Indian Penal Code saying that if you do this, this is the punishment. Okay, but here it provides some guidance. You can follow. If you follow, there won't be much problem for you. Even if you are required to take up the judicial course of law, otherwise law will not come to your rescue, and at the same time you are having the freedom, subject to public policy and the respective contractual terms and conditions under this law, to enact or execute or to have any kind of contract which they may enter into. So because of these two extreme facets, or because of these two extreme privileges that are extended by this contract law, we need to know little bit as to how law will come into existence, where the point of application of law, adoption of law will come into existence. So I'm not talking about the how the Britishers have enacted the law. As per the provisions existing at that particular point of time before the independence, what were the rules and regulations, all those things are available in legal and constitutional history of India, and that is not a subject for you people. That's a subject for 5 years degree course. If you are interested, you can open them and go through, but I will be covering the way in which a legislation would be enacted post independence. So who is the competent agency to enact the law? Parliament is the competent agency. How? Constitution has empowered the parliament and the concerned state legislatures. And you know, basically that center can make laws for certain subjects, state can make laws for certain subjects, and both of them are having the power to make the law concerning certain subjects listed out under concurrent list. And if the two bodies, that is parliament and the state legislature, enact a law, it is the law made by the parliament which may prevail. And if both of them are covering a little bit ancillary areas, both the laws will be having their applicability in the concerned state. So that is how we have some kind of common understanding. So a bill will be framed by the concerned executive, is either under the initiative from the concerned government, that is center or state as the case may be, or a private person may move a bill in the concerned parliament house or legislative house, we can say. So that if we say legislative house, it may be central or it may be state. And upon discussion, the concerned house would be approving and forwarding it to the next house if the next house is available, because certain states are not having a bicameral legislature. So, and then the government would be sending the approved bill to the concerned governor or the president, as the case may be, for his assent, and upon his assent, once again it comes back to the cabinet, and the cabinet directs the executive to issue a notification, and accordingly it will be coming into existence. That law will be coming into existence. And after coming into existence, that law will be having its applicability to the common public. Almost all in the similar fashion, this Indian Contract Act has come into existence in the year 1872. Okay. When that has come into existence, if anybody was not following the provisions under Indian Contract Act, then the concerned person is not having eligibility to claim the reliefs provided under this law. So we are not going to punish any person if he gets deviation from the guidance that is given under this law. He is not going to be punished, but he will be deprived of, because when he is not following the rules and regulations as guided under the respective law, law will not come to his rescue. He has to suffer an injury, and law cannot protect his interest. So that is the and at the time of enacting this law, as we have discussed yesterday, so in the preamble, which we have identified that this is nothing but codification of the existing principle. Whatever the principles that were being followed already at the time of this 1872 were defined and amended wherever it is required, and they were brought in the shape of a written law. So before 1872, 25th April also, people were entering into contracts. Okay. The only thing is that from this date onwards, this law come to the rescue of the concerned sections of the public who would be entering into the contract. Prior to it, this law will not help them unless and until this law is given a retrospective operation. Retrospective operation means effect to the law when it is given to the back date. Back date means the date, this is 25th, 1872 commencing date. So prior to this date, if this law is given force, then this law will be applicable to those matters also. Otherwise, the matters that were entering in the contracts that entered into on 25th April 1872 or after 25th April 1872 only would be governed with the help of this particular law. And you know very well, the purpose of the law is to make the people little bit more comfortable, little bit more regulative, little bit more controlled manner, and little bit more a discipline which the society is introduced with, saying that if you would like to enter into contract, come on, you follow these principles. What does it mean? So automatically, whenever we are required to enter into a contract, we try to approach a person stating the very particularly in respect of the sale of immovable property, purchase of the immovable property, where you try to approach concerned a person who is well versed with the terms as to the terms in respect of the sale of the immovable property, either the flat or plot or a house, independent house as the case may be, or a villa as the case may be. Why? Because so you know very well that if there is any contractual term that is missing, so tomorrow we need to suffer because we are spending this much of money. Let us be careful in drafting the contractual terms. So what does it mean? So this Indian Contract Act 1872 has created a discipline, has created some normative form where we are all required to follow these norms if we wanted to claim the protection given under this law. So we all interested to, because we are all proceeding with legitimate expectation. So when we are investing some amount in purchasing, or when we are investing at some amount or some kind of work, that is labor or interest, capital, etc. So we will be expecting the protection. So in order to have that protection, we have been given an idea by the legislature through this law, stating that if you want protection, come on, follow this law. Otherwise, choice is yours. So the impact the law would be creating on the people is nothing but to comply the law, provided the law is to their benefit. Law is to their advantage. Law is to protect their interest. Law is to come to their rescue in case they suffered any injury on account of some kind of malady that is being played by certain persons against them. So that is the impact of law. That is the procedure in which law will be coming into existence. That is the scope of the law, where law will be helping the lives of the people to better their transactions, to better their future prospects, etc., etc. With that understanding, let us proceed further, and in trying to learn certain basics as to what will be there in a legislation. So this kind of law, when it is consisting of the provisions that were enacted by the concerned legislature, maybe central or state as the case may be, or the executive sometimes, because executive also will be formulating the rules and regulations. Whatever it is, the bare provisions, we call it as bare act. So whenever we are discussing any legislation in the classroom, it is better to keep this legislation open and go through as and when necessary, because we need to have the understanding of the statutory language always, because it will be differing from our normal language. If we wanted to convey one item here, for example, this is the thing which we wanted to convey. This act may be called the Indian Contract Act. So for us, this sentence is simple, so you can understand. Whereas you see the preamble, whereas it is expedient to define and amend certain parts of the law relating to contracts, it is hereby enacted as follows. If we are asked to convey what this Indian Contract Act 1872 would be doing, what we will be mentioning herein, this law will come to the rescue of the parties who would like to enter into contract. So that is our language. But whereas statutory language, you see, whereas, that means the word whereas is indicating that the subject area of this law, the single word is able to specify that the context under which this law comes into application. It is expedient. Expedient means it is required. Why it is required? If you want protection, follow. Otherwise, no. Choice is yours. So the single word is able to give this much of meaning. To define. What does it mean to define? So generally, when we use word define, we say that, oh, definition is provided. Then in the law, definition holds a lot of importance. Whenever any dispute arises between the parties and the dispute is taken before the court of law, court will verify whether this dispute is governed under this law or not. How it will be verifying? With the help of the definition. So if the definition is able to cover your dispute, your issue, then court will say, okay, your dispute is governed by this law. Okay, come on, which provision you want to invoke? Which provision you want to take the help? So the single word define is able to tell you that this law is defining the behavior of the parties while entering into the contract, subsequent to enter into the contract in a particular fashion. If that is not followed by the concerned party, this law comes to your rescue. So single word is able to give that much of meaning in the context under which these words are used. So that is the significance of this. So with single word, it will be communicating a lot of meaning, saying that this is the purpose of the law, this is the requirement of the law, this is the prescription, this is the condition. etc. So because of that variation which we are having in respect of common language and the statutory language, we need to look into the statute as and when required, so that we are tuned to the statutory language. Tomorrow, when you are asked by the judge, come on, you filed a particular dispute, you are quoting so and so provision, how that provision is applicable to your case, Mr. Advocate, you explain. All of a sudden, if you are not having the knowledge that what is Bail Act, what is this he is asking, provision he is asking, what is this? So instead of facing the blank face before the judges, better we are tuned to the statutory language from the very first day onwards, so that it will be a cakewalk for you when you enter into the profession, right? So like that. So every chapter, every legislation will contain chapters. For example, you see here preamble, then preliminary. In preliminary portion, we'll have short title, extent of the law, commencement of that law, saving clauses, if any, if this law is saving any other legislations which are already existing by that time, that saving clause, and interpretation clause. Interpretation clause is also popularly known as definition clause. So it will give us an idea as to what is meant by agreement, what is meant by contract, what is meant by so and so forth. That are those terms that are used in the respective legislation only. Not every word that is required to be defined. So whatever the words that are used in this law will be provided with a definition herein or interpretation herein, so that after going through this, wherever you come across with those kind of words in the body of the legislation, you have to take that meaning only, but not any other meaning. Then we have chapter 1 herein, and in the chapter 1 it is dealing with of the communication, acceptance and revocation of proposal. So concerning this topic, there are some provisions, and these provisions are listed out herein, and we call these things as sections. You see here at the top left corner, it is mentioned section, isn't so? So what are the sections? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So this number you can't change. The text of the provision you can't change. If you do not remember to write in the examination hall, you can just put the gist of the provision stating that section 9 specifies so and so, like that. There won't be any problem. Then chapter 2 deals with off contracts, voidable contracts and voidable agreements. Concerning this topic, there are some provisions which are listed out from section 10 to section 23, and void agreements are dealt with under 24 to 30. Then chapter 3 deals with contingent contracts. So like that, in the form of chapters and with a subheading where the particular provisions, the cluster of the provisions, cluster means group of the provisions, are dealing with this particular aspect. So if you want to deal with this particular aspect in your examination, then you have to remember that all these provisions you have to quote. And in addition to these provisions, if there is any linking provision which we are going to discuss in the classroom, you need to mention. You need not remember all these things by hearting, just like you will be doing in your school. But if you simply mention the gist of the same, then that would be more than enough. This is what the basic elements which we need to know in respect of a statute, because we are discussing certain topics based on this particular statute only. So this is the basic idea and basic understanding about the law, which we are going to discuss in the form of various topics that are given in our syllabus. So since I have discussed the syllabus yesterday, I'm just directly jumping into the topics one after the other as per the syllabus. You can just now and then look into your syllabus. You can just now and then look into your Bail Act, and we will be referring to this Bail Act as per the necessity in the very classroom itself. And after the completion of the class for that particular day, My request is, my sincere appeal to you is to spare 5 minutes per each subjects, at least in the before the bedtime. Okay, so 5 subjects you are having, 5 are 25 minutes out of 24 hours I am asking you. So this 25 minutes, each subject 5 minutes. You can put your clock also, alarm, smart mobile, and spare only 5 minutes. And what you need to do for in that 5 minutes, what is that we discussed today? Why we discussed that today? What is discussed there? How it is going to have a practical application? What, why, when, how? So by sparing these 4 questions, putting 4 questions to the topic which we discussed in the classroom, if you just analyze, you will be learning the subject in a wonderful manner. And you know very well, the principles of learning are nothing but read minimum 2 to 3 times, depending upon your learning skills capability, but think 8 to 9 times whatever you read. So it should be in how many folds? 4 folds of the learning. So unless you think over the respective subject, you are not in a position to learn the subject. That is the learning pattern which I suggest you, because it will be a successful, it is a successful learning pattern as identified by the psychologists also. Okay, then what is that we are going to learn in this particular portion? We are going to learn what is meant by agreement, what is meant by contract, and thereby we are going to learn the distinction between these two. Then we are going to learn under this topic the essential elements of a contract. So for a contract, for an agreement to be construed as a contract, what shall be there? What are the essential elements that we are going to learn? We are also going to learn various types of contracts that are validated under this particular law. And we are also going to learn under this unit the concept of offer, acceptance, and the rules of communication and the revocation thereof. These are the 4 outcomes which we are going to achieve after learning this particular topic. Then exactly what this law is dealing with. This Indian Contract Act is dealing with a contract. Under that legislation, we are going to learn elements of contract, essentials of a valid contract, types of contract, and under these elements of contract, once again, there is an agreement to be studied by us. Whether that agreement is enforceable under the law or not, we have to identify. Then that agreement once again can be classified into offer and acceptance. And this offer, once again, we are going to study the dimension of the legal rules which an offer is expected to have, and what are the kinds of offers that are validated under this law, and the essentials of a proposal, and how this offer is to be communicated to the other party or parties, as the case may be, public in general, etc. And we are going to learn the acceptance and the legal rules of a valid acceptance and the communication of acceptance. So these are all the things which we are going to learn under this particular unit. This is the overview of this particular unit. As we have been discussing since yesterday, we are all required to enter into the contracts right from our nowadays we can say that it is a pre-birth also, a pre-birth and pre-conception also. For example, there are some people who go to the medical centers for the purpose of IVF, etc., etc., where they have got some kind of a problem in childbearing. So from that point of time onwards, you will be entering into a contract with that medical clinic, stating that you will be following their guidance and they will be providing that kind of service, and consideration will be there. So from that point of time onwards, the contract is entered into. If you start from there, every walk of life after birth, So what are the things to be given? And then child education. For education, you will be entering into a specific agreement with the concerned college or university stating that you give us so and such education and we pay you so and so. And from there you enter into contract of employment or a business or whatever the case may be. Then even after the fag end also, so nowadays it is becoming a kind of culture that for my funeral, I would be depositing some amount with the concerned agency who is going to conduct the funeral in case I am not able to have, or they will be supporting my family members to conduct the funeral. So right from before birth onwards, after death also, we are being entering into a field where we are forced to enter into, we are required to enter into a specific agreement which is having the legal tenets so that that agreement is executable under the provisions of the law. So that is the scope of the contract. That is the area where this Indian Contract Act is having its applicability prior to birth, after death also. Having that scenario, how best we need to understand this particular law? Definitely, if we didn't understand this law, we will be put to some kind of issue somewhere or the other if we fail to see that the respective interest of the concerned party is not protected, is not taken care of. Then, with that basic understanding, let us start identifying what a contract is. The term contract is defined under section 2H of the Indian Contract Act 1872. You see, 2H, if we open the respective law also, section 2, this is section 2 under the interpretation class, 2H. So which one is 2H? Here it is. So 2H, an agreement enforceable by law is a contract. That is what it is referred herein. An agreement enforceable by law is a contract. Simply, hardly 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 words are giving us a lot of information which we are going to discuss now. The contract consists of two essential elements. You see, if we try to break this definition and try to understand, we will learn that there are two compulsory elements, essential elements, which shall be there for a contract to be executed or to be enforced under the provisions of the Indian Contract Act. What are they? One is agreement and another one is enforceability. So simply when we enter into an agreement, that will not be having the enforceability characters or qualities unless that agreement is complying the provisions of the Indian Contract Act 1872. So it must have both of them. There shall be an agreement and that agreement must be having the qualifications to be enforced with the help of the provisions of Indian Contract Act. Then coming to agreement. What agreement means? The term agreement given in section 2E of the Act is defined. You see. So section 2E, if we go here, every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other is an agreement. Take for example, I am there on one side and you are there on another side. So now what is the promise and exchange of promise in between you and me? The promise from my side through the college is that I will be discussing the law of contract subject to you in an eloquent manner and make you understand the provisions of the Indian Contract Act so far as its enforcement and execution, etc. And what is your promise? Your promise is that you would be attending the classes and learning the respective subject by following. Then what is the consideration in between both of us? The consideration is the admission taken by you in the college and the concerned payment of fees made in the college. So that is the consideration. and the promise from my side to give you subject, from your side to receive the subject, isn't so? So when such kind of a promise or set of promises, so there may be single promise or there may be number of promises as the case may be. So those things, when they are clubbed together with the help of the consideration between these promises. So my promise, your promise to learn, my promise to teach, and in between there is a bridge, that is consideration. Consideration is admission which you have taken, isn't so? So this is how the agreement is defined. That is what here it is specified. Every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. In order to have further understanding of this concept, let us divide the parts once again and try to have much more insights into this particular concept. What are these things which you need to learn? That is what I have explained in the form of example. When the person to whom the proposal is made. So the college has made a proposal through law set office stating that if you take admission into our college, okay, we will be providing a legal education to you in the name of 5 years course, 3 years course, LLM, etc., etc. So when the person to whom the proposal is made, so you are all the persons before taking admission, having completed your LACET exam or having completed your requirement to take up management quota. So to all of you, a proposal is made from the college, and that proposal signifies his assent. So when we are coming to the public through the law set office stating that we are here to provide so and so, it is clarifying you that yes, when law set office is incorporating our college name, you are able to have a clarification, significance, that means importance, stating that yes, this college will provide legal education. So, and not only that, so when that proposal is reaching you through the law set office, you are able to feel that if you take admission, college will accept, subject to norms. Okay. So the very proposal made by the college is giving an indication that if you are ready to accept this proposal, they are ready to accept the same. The proposal becomes accepted. So when college made proposal, you accepted, thereby the proposal has taken a further step. So it has moved ahead and now it is in the form of acceptance. The accepted proposal becomes promise. So unless you take admission as a student, the promise made by the college, the offer made by the college, technically we call it as, legally we call it as offer made by the college, takes the shape of a promise when the offer is accepted. That is what here it is. Accepted proposal becomes promise. So offer, you see here, offer or proposal plus acceptance will be becoming agreement. Okay, so that is how the agreement would be entered into. What is this happening? 10:55 our time, but the session is ending within 1 minute. Okay, if the session is ending within 1 minute, you please try to rejoin for 5 more minutes. Okay, meanwhile I'll take attendance also.
Sure, ma'am.
Still there are more? Yeah. This is a big... Some more students are there.